وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Just to recap what we've already been over, we started off with the introduction of why we are here in this specific retreat. Could anyone raise their hand and tell me? If not, I'll just choose someone. Go on. As the brother mentioned, seeing and tasting. And the second thing which Ustaad Zafar went over, can anyone remember what that presentation was on? The second thing which we've been over. Hamid. Journey of man, yes. So our purpose and our identity of being here. And now, inshallah, we will go on to the four preconditions of the four preconditions, which now probably sounds a little bit confusing. But what this is, that to experience the unveilings or to have the experience of the openings, there are conditions and criteria which we have to meet. But before we can meet them ones, there's four major ones and there's also four minor ones. So inshallah we'll go over them, and also we'll go over how to practically implement these criteria, how to implement these conditions, because as we know, as Ustad Sharlam has mentioned, it is not just about theory. We are here to practice. We are here to achieve. We are here to see and taste. Okay, so inshallah we'll move on. So the first four preconditions of the preconditions are Tawbah, Mujahada, our Aqidah and Fiqh. Basically, we need to have these four conditions before we can go. These are the preconditions of the preconditions. So for example, how you have, for example, Salah. And to the nearest meaning, there is a hadith that Salah is the key to Jannah. And the key to Salah is wudu. So that is like a precondition for the Salah. Similarly, before we can start purifying ourselves, the initial purification that we have to do is, number one, have the correct belief. So this is like the wings on a plane. Okay, it's like one wing on the plane. And the best example about Aqidah that I can give is, just for example, we have a number starting with 1. Okay, so we have 1. And then you put a 0 after it, that makes it 10. And if you put 5 zeros after it, can someone tell me what that makes, Brother Hussain? 5 zeros after 10, what does that make it? Testing your maths now. Huh? Not 10 million makes it. Go on, brother. 1 million. So by adding them zeros, it puts a lot of value on that. Now, if I was to take that 1 away and put a 0 there, what value would them zeros have? Can someone tell me? It would have no value. So if your belief about the one who created you is not correct, then all the actions you do, and them zeros are like the actions that you do, the good deeds, the zikr, the salah, it will have no effect. It'll be as though you put a 0 there. So that's why your belief about the one has to be correct. About Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be correct. So that's the initial thing which we need, is the correct belief. But that's not just sufficient to have a belief. We also have to know the do's and don'ts. That's what fiqh is, the do's and don'ts. How do we perform salah? How do we perform wudu? You know, for example, if you do not know how to do ghusl, how can you perform wudu? You know, how can you, if you don't know how to do ghusl, then you're not even pure to do wudu. You can't even pray your salah. So how then do you expect some form of opening to happen if your ghusl is not even done correctly? So you might think these are very minor, small things. However, they have very, very major effects when it comes to spiritual openings. So we need to take this into, we take heed of this as well. And then now the wheels is the wheel of Tawbah. Why is Tawbah important? Why is that one of the preconditions? Because as human beings, we make mistakes. It's inevitable. No matter how good of a person you are, somewhere down the line, you will make a mistake. And Tawbah is what brings us back. Returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what brings us back on our path, is what cleans that baggage off us and sets us back onto the path. So that is like a wheel that keeps us going on the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the last wheel, as we can see, is mujahidah, striving. Without any form of striving, without any form of working hard in anything, you cannot achieve. If it's in work, and the same goes for the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're not going to strive, if you're not going to work for it, then what is the chance of you getting it? Look at the work that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam put in for us to reach this message. Do you not think we have to put some work in to attain the blessings of that, to attain the rewards of that message which He has sent to us? So now, and all four are necessary. Like on a plane, if you have the wings, but you didn't have the wheels, how will you move to set off? Also, if you had the wheels, but you did not have the wings, as soon as you come to the edge, what's going to happen? You're going to go down. So all four of these preconditions of the preconditions are very, very important, and we need to make sure they are correct, and we are doing these, and our beliefs are correct. We learn the knowledge of fiqh, and we're performing the other two actions. So now we'll move on to the next four preconditions. So we've been over the four preconditions. Now we'll go on to the actual preconditions, the major ones. And the first one is the purification of the 7 organs. Okay, so now this plane, and now the organs on this plane represents the doors. So you have one door which is your tongue, another door which is your eyes, another door which is your ears, another door which is your feet, and there's 3 more doors. Can anyone tell me the last 3? Stomach is that? Yep, that's one of them, but it's not come on yet. And there's another one, the last one. Can anyone tell me? Which one? Yes, the private part. So these are like 7 doors off the plane. And for example, now here we have a plane, okay? Now, if these doors were open, or these doors were not very strong, or not fitted very well, and a strong wind came, can someone tell me what would happen? Can you raise a hand? The plane would go down. So your organs are like this. They are the door of your heart. Your organs are the door of your heart. So here we have a heart. And if them organs are not pure, if them organs are impure, what's going to happen to this heart? Could someone tell me? Can we have someone else? It's going to go black. So let's have a look. So this is when we embrace Islam. But when our organs are not pure, let's find it. This is what happens. A black dot comes onto our heart. Now, this is not a physical black dot. This is a spiritual black dot. I.e., what this means is that when it comes to performing good deeds, you become very reluctant. When it comes to going to do things which to the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes very easy for you. This is what it means. This when you've got a lot of black dots on your heart. And when you've got less black dots, and this means you're more inclined to going towards towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, like we said, that these organs, they protect the heart. So if these organs are not purified, then what's going to happen? And what's inside our heart? We have to realize, what is it? It's our iman. It's our good traits. And if we cannot protect these, then if we do not purify these organs, we're putting our iman at risk. So first and foremost, what we have to purify is our 7 organs. And as we see here, the next one, if it is completely, if all your organs are indulged in evil and in sin, this is the state of the heart. So if we begin to purify them, one by one, the heart begins to get cleaner and cleaner, and the effects of good deeds, you will begin to see them in a person's action, or the goodness that is in the heart will begin to become apparent. So this is the first stage. This is the first precondition, major precondition that we have to do. We have to purify our organs in order for us to receive the unveilings. And to the nearest meaning, there is a hadith that a Muslim is one who another Muslim is his tongue and hands are safe from. So a Muslim is one who another Muslim, his tongue and his hands are safe from. So Rasulullah has mentioned this, and this is the importance of purifying our organs. And now we go on to so this is just an example of how you would do this. So how would you begin to purify your organs, which at the end, we were going to go into more details of it, but this is just showing you how you would do this. So for example, different sins of the tongue could be backbiting, slandering, lying, ridiculing. So obviously, as we said, this is a practical, we've come for practical experience. So we're going to practically show you how you can begin to purify these organs. So this is just showing you how you, but inshallah I'm going to go into more detail at this towards the end of the slide, inshallah. And now, here it's just showing the effects of blocking the organs. If for example, if we've not purified that, if you begin to purify them one by one, what begins to happen is the heart begins to get pure. And then once the heart is purified, then this is how it begins to look. Once all them 7 organs are purified, this is how the heart begins to look. So the heart remains clean and the effects of zikr and prayer begins to show itself. Now we come on to the second stage, which is the purification of the mind. So now you've purified your organs, you've blocked shaitan from getting in by speaking rightly towards people, using your hands in the right way, going to the right places, not going to the wrong place with your feet, putting halal food into your stomach. Now comes to the mind. Now we have to purify the mind. This is the second precondition of the unveilings. So now when it comes to the mind, it's like the body of the plane. So it's like the shell of the plane. If the shell of the plane is not strong, even though the doors might be shut, if something more severe than a wind comes, like for example a storm, very strong rain, then it's going to begin to leak in through the plane. So this is why the shell also has to be very strong, and this is like the mind. So now, purification of the mind. Now we need to know, first of all, how does shaitan attack our mind before we can begin to purify it? How does he attack our mind? We know with the organs, he tries to lead us towards committing evil sins with the 7 organs. Now how does he do this with the mind? So here we will come to see is that this is the mind. And what shaitan does is he puts an evil whisper. See, the best way which I like to imagine this is your mind is like a satellite dish. Imagine it's a satellite dish. Shaitan is one station here, and he is sending broadcasts into this satellite dish, trying to infect you. So these are like the whispers. That signal he's sending to your mind is like the whispers. So as you can see, that's like a signal which he has sent. It is an evil whisper. And now, when this evil whisper comes into our mind, we have 2 options. So either we can take the route of getting rid of the whisper, or we can take the route towards going to sin. So let's see what happens when we take the route of going towards sin. A person slowly starts to think about the evil thought and allows a sparkle of evil to settle in the mind. So for example, just say you've got like £10,000 between 3-4 of you, and you say that, right? You agree that you're the one who's going to keep the key, but no one is allowed to touch the money. It's an agreement that, okay, we've got £10,000 in this safe place, you keep the key, but look, we agree no one's going to touch this money, we're just going to leave it here. Okay, now a thought comes into your mind. Do you know what? I've got the key. Might as well take the money. Now, this is the thought which has entered into your mind. Now, what you begin to do is, you think, right, but everyone knows I've got the key, so how do I make it out as though I've not took the money? Now you begin to plan. And so this is now gone from a whisper into your mind. And now what you've done, you've let that whisper settle, which has now made you begin to plan what you're going to do. And then eventually you execute that. So maybe you take the money and you have this alibi and this plan. Now this is so dangerous, the mind, is that people who you hear about murders and these kind of things, all it starts is from 1 whisper or 2 whispers from the shaitan. And then they've begun to dwell on this, and eventually it's led to such a serious sin. So this is how shaitan provokes us. But you've got to remember one thing, he's not in control of the mind, you are in control. He only whispers. He only puts that thought into your head. And with the mind, there is 3 things you should not do and 2 things you should do. 3 things which you should not do is, number 1, you should not bring the thought into your head intentionally, because then you've done the job for shaitan. He's the one who's supposed to put the thought in your head. But if you're putting the thought in your head, then he thinks, Well, he's done the job for me now. I don't need to do that. So do not bring an evil thought into your mind intentionally. Number 2, do not fight it. Because as we said, you cannot control him putting a whisper into your mind. That is not in your control. So if you're going to keep fighting it, he'll put more and more whispers into your mind. And then eventually you're giving attention to that thought. Eventually you will act upon that thought. So do not fight it. And the third thing is, do not dwell or entertain it. So if the thoughts that like, you know what, or for example, you've seen a beautiful woman, it's in your head, now you think, oh, that woman I've seen, or this car I've seen, and this, that, etc., or then drugs. You know, you start entertaining, oh, it's like this, it's like that. Do not entertain that thought, because then you're allowing it to settle in your mind as well. And then, so as one starts to entertain it, the mind begins to become inclined to it, as we mentioned. The evil thought grows as the person starts to entertain it, so do not entertain it. Evil thought inflames the mind and starts to take over. So once it's becoming to the mind, it's very, very, very hard then. Once that thought's there, you know, because you've allowed it to settle, it's in your mind, you've allowed it to get in, it's very difficult to deal with it. Let me ask you a question. A good example of how to understand this is, just a bonfire night's gone now. What was harder to put out, the fire or a sparkle? Can someone answer that for me? A sparkle. But if you've got a fire, what do you have to do? The fire brigade has to come, he has to get his big hose pipe out, and he has to, and even then, only until tomorrow does the fire come out. But with a sparkle, you can blow that out. That's like, the sparkle's like the whisper. That when that sparkles come, when that whispers come, deal with it then, and it will go. Whereas if you dwell on it, you fight with it, you let it come in, then it's become a flame. It's going to require a lot for you to do then before you can get rid of it. So now what we have to think of is now we know that the whisper of shaitan, now we know how he does it. He whispers into our minds. Now the question is, how do we get rid of that thought? Okay, we said don't fight it. So if I don't fight it, how am I going to get rid of it? The way to get rid of it is two ways. There's a technique to do this. And the technique to get rid of it is, number 1, seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Seek refuge. And then use your willpower just by, what you do is you divert the thought. You divert it. Like a funnel, it comes in and you put the funnel out so the thought goes out. That is the best way to get rid of it. And now I just want to give you an example. So if everyone can just close their eyes for a second. Now what I want you to do is imagine that there is a monkey in front of you, right? And this monkey now, he has a banana in his hand. He's eating his banana. And now he's staring at you thinking, why are you looking at me? I'm eating my bananas. Look somewhere else. So now you see this beautiful garden. There is beautiful flowers in there, beautiful trees, very colourful. And now you find this tree, and this tree is beautiful. It has so much flowers on there, and you see your favourite fruit. Like, for example, I like apples. And you see the apples and they look ripe. Now, where's that monkey gone? Open your eyes. When you began to think about that tree, where did that monkey go? Was he still there? He had disappeared. This is the same with the thought. Okay? So when that thought comes, when you divert it to something else, something halal, you know, maybe the best thing to divert to is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to His Messenger. If not even something halal. So for example, the thought of, I need a cigarette, I'm craving for it. You know, I need something else that's not good, I need something stronger. Divert it. Cheeseburger, a juicy fat cheeseburger. Start thinking about it. It's halal, but it'll get rid of it. It'll get rid of the thought. There's nothing wrong, but don't indulge too much on that. The best to indulge is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His Prophet. But I'm just giving an example so you know how to get rid of the thought. So diverting. And then what begins to happen after that? And then again, the evil whisper enters, and again the person uses the same technique. And once a person gets familiar to using this technique, every time the thought comes, it becomes automatic. It becomes an automatic response. Your mind will know then that, you know what, these kind of thoughts, I don't give attention to this. It will just you'll get used to just redirecting it. You'll notice that this thought is a whisper of shaitan, I need to redirect it. So this will protect you. So this will protect your plane. As you can see here now, the mind is protected by every time the thoughts come, it diverts. And yes, there's levels to this. It doesn't just by doing this one technique, there's levels to this, but this is just an overview of how this occurs. It becomes like a shield. The protective shield is further strengthened and now being trained to think of Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. So once now you've created this shield, now you're in the perfect position to now to put the thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the thoughts of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam within your mind. And now we go on to the third stage of purification. Now, this stage represents the seats, and this is your soul or your heart. This is your heart. This is the purification of the heart. Now, this represents the seats. So this is like the qualities of sincerity, patience, servitude. So, for example, now you're on your plane. Your outer your outer now. Your doors are secure. They're locked with the Sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now shaitan's whispers cannot enter your mind. The body, the shell of the plane is now strong. But now, what about the inside? You know, if the inside is not good, if the inside is good, if the seats are well, then it's most likely you will be and you're comfortable. Then you'll be happy to travel on that plane. Whereas, if the seats which are on fire, like for example these seats, then will you want to travel on this plane, even though the shell is well and even though outside is protected? But if the inside, if the seats are like this, who's going to want to travel on a plane like this? So this is like our heart. This is like our heart. And what is like the first class seats? It is these good traits. The traits like patience, humbleness, sincerity, servitude, shukr. These are the traits. These are the good traits. These are like the first class seats. Whereas the seats which are like this are like the traits of jealousy, self-likeness, love of dunya, this love of excessive material, arrogance, thinking you are greater than other people, and pride, that showing off. These are the traits which ruin the plane, which cause flame onto the plane. So therefore, we need to purify the heart. Can you imagine being in front of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You want an opening. You're imagining Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and now Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is looking at your soul, and he can see these traits. What kind of opening do you think you'll have then? Whereas if Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam seen these traits within you, traits which reflect his qualities, then why will he not want to open his door for you to come and see him, for you to come and meet him? So this is the third precondition. So we've been over two preconditions. Can someone quickly mention the first precondition? Can someone put their hand up? The brother behind you. The first precondition? That's the precondition. Yeah, the minor one. That's correct. So that's belief. And then the second minor one, Brother Qasim. Could you mention it? You mentioned belief. And there's a second minor precondition. The fiqh, mashallah, yes. And then there was a third. Does anyone remember the third? Striving, mujahada. And the fourth, someone from over here? And tawbah. Yes. And then we went on to the first major precondition, which was, Brother Hussain, do you remember? Do you want to pass it on to a friend? Purification of the seven organs. This is the first major precondition. And then what was the second one, which you just mentioned? Is the mind. MashaAllah, I just wanted to make sure you're all still awake and listening. Okay, so now we've come on to the third one. And as I mentioned regarding the third one is purification of the heart. So what we want to do is put these qualities of sincerity, of humbleness within our heart. So these good traits so they can settle. And here I will just show you what the soul is like. So the evil soul is like this. So basically what this is showing is that them little white bits is house of evil trait. So this is like the quality, the evil quality, which now, because you've been indulged in excessive evil, this quality has now sat in your heart and has become part of your soul. So it's like arrogance. For example, that could be arrogance. And when you keep indulging in the sin, troops come around it. So that becomes to protect that. Then that, basically what that does, it makes that trait remain in your heart permanently. You know, so for example, Ramadan, we say the shaitans are locked up. Yet so much evil still comes out of us. Why is that? Because shaitan's not there anymore. So that's our own traits are now beginning to show. That are our own traits. And this is what's happened because we've been allowing ourselves to the love of dunya, being arrogant, showing off, and we've repetitively done this. We've allowed this quality now to become permanent, and it's built a house in our soul where it resides there now. And not just that, we've allowed it to build its troops, so now that trait has become protected. This is what the evil soul is like. So this is someone who's possessed all of them negative qualities. And now, when one tries to begin to pray, so for example, one tries to pious, become good deeds, it manages to fight a few troops, but it is not enough because that trait has settled. It requires more. It begins to fight the troops off, but the traits are still there. So a person might not be as arrogant, but that quality is still there. He might have levels of piety, he might be generous, but at times he might swear at other people. He might look down on his parents, you know, but he might be pious to others. So that piety is coming in there, but that arrogance is also still there. This is what this is showing, that when a person slowly begins to good deeds, the good deeds show, but it has not got rid of the evil traits yet. And then slowly, when a person becomes steadfast on what has been prescribed to him, so for example, the zikrs, going through the purification, this is where you begin to build a strength to get rid of these troops and begin to destroy these houses. So how it says here, the troops of good traits increase in number and tries to fight off and win back as much land as possible from the evil troops of evil traits. So first, when you begin to do the dhikrs, when you begin to purify the tongue and begin to become sincere in your actions, then this begins to fight off them evil traits, them evil troops. And then what begins to happen slowly is then how the opposite effect begins to happen. So how the shaitan or how the evil traits had begun to build a house inside of you that became permanent. Now what begins to happen in your soul is that the good traits begin to become permanent and the good troops begin to come around. So that quality, for example, sincerity becomes more apparent in your behavior, in your salah, in your dhikr, in your remembrance of Allah. It becomes more apparent. You become less arrogant. You're not showing off as much. But it's not completely gone, but it's slowly going away as you purifying yourself. So now slowly the defenses weaken day by day, so they begin to weaken. As the more good you begin to do, as the more you put in the good qualities inside you, like sincerity, these traits begin to weaken. And then eventually, what begins to happen is you get rid of the traits, and then as the good increase, the traits begin to decrease. And then finally what happens is the purified soul. So now, once you have purified your soul, you've done the organs, you have done the mind, now you have done the soul. Once you have done all three, now a person has achieved purification. Now they've become fully purified. So now we have done 3 preconditions. What's the 4th precondition now? The 4th precondition is, so now what I forgot to mention is then what happens is once you're purified, you get a protective shield. So when these evil traits try to come back, so for example the trait of arrogance, because you are in good and in the remembrance and you're purified now, you begin to fight them off. They do not begin to enter the heart. Your soul recognizes that this is taking me to evil. This trait is beginning to come back into me. So it stops it, it protects you. It begins to protect your soul and your heart. And then after this, once you have purified all three, once you've done the three major conditions, the fourth major condition is the path of enlightenment. Now you let the love of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the love of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala enter your heart. You begin to enlighten your heart with the commands and the obedience of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, with the Sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this is when, now one thing is to love Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but just imagine when you are being loved by the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Has anyone ever thought of that? We talk about loving the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but can you imagine when Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam begins to love you? This is where you're at that stage, where that love of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam comes to you, where you almost become like a beloved to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now you are ready at this point to have these openings. Now Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is wanting to see you because you've become his beloved. He is you someone who he loves now. Just imagine that thought. So this is what happens, and this is the fourth precondition, the four major preconditions. So now once we have done the four major conditions, what was the whole purpose of these preconditions? What was the objective? Where was the plane going? We forgot to mention, where was the actual plane going in all of this? Is to the four objectives. But before the four objectives, we've got to make sure that on this plane we have the right driver. You've got the love, you've got Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but when you're going closer and closer to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when you're going closer, you need to have the right driver. And this is your teacher. This is the one who takes you closer and takes you in the right direction. So for example, if you were on a plane, you had a beautiful plane, you had a new plane, it was brand new, it was first class, you had everything as well. But the driver who's driving it does not know the route, is not experienced. How far do you think you're going to get in that plane? How useful is that plane then? You've made all that effort, you spent all that money, but the one in the driving seat is not experienced off this route, does not know how to take you to the closeness of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, practically, in how to take you to them openings, does not know practically how to take you to them openings. There's many books on it. There's many people who can read books on it. Many people who know about this knowledge, but there is not many who can take you practically to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So then, without that, even though you've got the right, you've got the right plane, everything's good, the shell's well, but the driver is not the right driver, then you're back to square one again. So it's important then you have the right driver. And then you're now once you have the plane, you have the right driver, now you're under the control tower of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So now your signals, like we talked about, you know how the plane, it gets messages that you need to go this route, that route, avoid this area. Now your control tower is Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That plane now will be getting guided from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then, as I said, is the four objectives. This plane is going somewhere. It is not just wandering like this loosely around. It's going somewhere. It has a destination. And this is your four objectives. Once you have met these four major preconditions, then once you have purified, you will reach these four objectives and see these four objectives as though they're like your certificates. They're your reward. For being purified, you receive these four awards. It's like your graduation. Giving preference to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Giving preference to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Compassion upon the creation. And presence of Allah. So when we say giving preference to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, once you have become purified and you have met all the four conditions and you have the correct mashaykhs and you are, now what will happen is 24/7 you will be in the remembrance of Allah, i.e. the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always be first for you. In every action, be it business, be it pleasure, be it sport, wherever you are, you will always give preference to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that action, wherever you are. Not just in, a lot of people give the commands to salah in the masjid, but they forget about business when they're dealing with people, when they're dealing with their parents, when they're dealing with the neighbors. There's also a way to do that. And then this is where the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes in, is that you begin to give preference to the Sunnah, i.e. your actions are like, you will give preference to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it. The way he dealt with his neighbors, you will begin to deal with your neighbors like that. The way he would speak to people, you begin to speak to people like that. So you become like a duplicate of Rasul. You become like a reflection to your own ability to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then also you give compassion upon creations. You will not mistreat others. You will not mistreat your parents. You will be good to your parents. You will serve your parents. You will help the needy. You will help the poor. You will not be cruel to animals. Even the ant on the floor, you'll have respect for it. Even the ant on the floor, you'll have respect for it. And the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will always be in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There will not be a time when you're not. Whatever action you're doing, wherever you are, you'll always be in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah's watching me, Allah's with me, Allah's listening. These are the four objectives you will reach. Once you've met these four conditions and once you've had these openings, what will happen is you will reach these four objectives. A person will be given preference to these things, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the creation. He will be compassionate to the creation, and he will also always be in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, this is an overview of everything we just mentioned. Is here you have the mountain where where the four preconditions are met, and then the bridge to take you to the objectives are the four major conditions. First were the four minor conditions which we mentioned. Then we went to the four major preconditions, which then take us to our objective, the four objectives, which then allows us to have these openings. The grace and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends upon us, and Allah ta'ala grants us these openings, and then we receive the pleasure, which is the ultimate aim, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now, we've explained this to you, the preconditions, but like we said at the beginning, this is a practical experience we're here for. So now we need to give you the 5 fundamental practices which Ustaad Shah mentioned at the beginning, which will be mentioned by myself. Now, what are these 5 fundamental practices that we can do to allow these openings to occur? So now we're going to go over them 5 fundamental practices. So first is the dhikr. Now, what the dhikr is like the nutrition, is the nourishment. It nourishes the soul. Like, for example, how I like to look at this is when you go, for example, when you go to the gym and you work out, to nourish them muscles, you have to have good quality food. The zikr is like that nourishment. So when you are performing the good deeds, to keep them inside you, the dhikr helps you, and the dhikr motivates you to carry on doing more. That's what the dhikr does. So the first dhikr which you are given is the dhikr of La ilaha illallah. So this is the dhikr which you are given of La ilaha illallah. And how you perform this dhikr is, number one, so you imagine how you see where the La is, that all the evil traits are in the stomach. So all the evil traits of the desires, all the evil desires you can think of, they all come to the stomach. As you say La, these evil desires are pulled straight to the head. So the evil desires are being pulled as you say La. And when you say Ilaha, then these desires are being released from the head and are being taken out of the body. So all these desires are being released from the body. And then you imagine that the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in front of you, and there's light coming from this name of Allah. And when you say Illallah, that light is striking your heart, and from the heart is reflecting upon your stomach where all them evil desires are. So let's go through that again. So La, when you say La, first you imagine all the evil traits are here. Then as you say La, all them evil traits are coming up to the head. As we're saying Ilaha, these evil traits are being released. All of them, what were inside of us, the want of women, the want of drugs, all these desires we have, they're all going. And then as we say Illallah, from the light of Allah that we can see here above us, it is coming and striking our heart and then reflecting onto our stomach. So it's like a circle like this which is happening. So it's La ilaha illallah. And this is how we do the zikr. And you will be doing this every day while you're here 5 minutes. This is your own individual zikr you'll be doing. And this zikr will help to get rid of these evil desires and the want for these desires. So just 5 minutes a day you'll perform the zikr, a minimum of 5 minutes. If you want to do more, you can do up to 15 minutes. So you'll do 5 minutes of La ilaha illallah. That's the first thing you'll do, the zikr. And then the second fundamental act is once zikr is the muraqabah. Now, this is the muraqabah dua, which another ustad will go into more detail, but the muraqabah which we'll be doing is the one of contemplating on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name. So you imagine the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in front of you. You will close your eyes. As you can see, we'll just do a little practice now. So look at this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fully focus on this name. Just focus on it for about 20 seconds. Just focus on it. Now close your eyes and try to imagine this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in front of you. And what you will do is begin to release the stress, the thoughts, the difficulties, everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything that's in your heart, the difficulties of the day, the hardships you went through, everything you release it. Everything you want from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will ask Him. And you'll imagine Allah Ta'ala is in front of you. He's watching you, He's with you, He's listening to you. The name of Allah is in front of you. And now imagine He's watching you, He's with you, He's listening to you. Feel His presence. Feel the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Feel that presence. And then you're just giving everything that's in your heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will do this for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. You can open your eyes now. So you will do this for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. And also the muraqabah dua, which we've seen here, which will be explained to you, which will be combined with this, but another ustad will explain that to you in much more detail, inshallah. So here you've been given two fundamentals. One is the fundamental of the La ilaha illallah dhikr. Then after that, you'll perform the meditation of Allah. And what this is doing is connecting you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So trying to get you in that mind state of always being connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To make sure your signal is always with Allah and not with shaitan. This is what this is doing. So when you're out and about, this is like a practice. So you're practicing it. You're building that connection in seclusion. So when you go out in your daily life, you can remain in that presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can remain in that connection. You can keep speaking and communicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even when you're not in prayer. Even when you're out and about in public. So that's the second dhikr. And then we have to go on to the purification of the body. So we start off with the body, the organs. We have to start off with the organs. And the first organ that we start off with is the tongue. As we've seen the sheet before, now we're going to go into more detail of that sheet, of how do we purify the tongue. So now look, here is many sins relating to the tongue specifically. We have useless talks, swearing, backbiting, cheating, slandering, so many negative sins are correlated with the tongue. But look, compared to the rest, we have the ears, we have the eyes, but look at the tongue, how many sins are there compared to the rest. And to the nearest meaning, there is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he has mentioned that if you can guarantee, this to the nearest meaning, it's not the exact wording, if you can guarantee what's in between your legs and in between your lips, you're guaranteed Jannah. So this just shows, and that means the tongue and the private parts. This can be guaranteed. If you can purify this, a person is guaranteed Jannah. Now imagine if you purify all 7. But this is also suggesting the importance of the purification of the tongue, how important the tongue is. Rasul mentioned in particular this organ, which shows how significant this organ is to purify. So we will start by purifying the tongue. And now this is an example of how you will do this. So for example, today is our start day. So we'll put in today, and then for one day, okay, we didn't do any of these. We were doing well, alhamdulillah. We're not backbiting, we're not slandering, we're not making any useless talk. Alhamdulillah, we're doing really well, okay? And then comes day 5, something happened, and we swore at someone. We swore at someone. We did it with intention that, you know what, someone annoyed us and we swore. Then we realized, oh damn, I'm doing my tongue sheet. Oh damn. So what do? You put a cross there, but don't despair. You start again the next time. And even a cross, don't think a cross is that you've lost, you've been defeated. Even a cross is a win. Why? Why is a cross a win? Because you've identified the mistake you've made. Before you can eradicate the mistake, before you can get rid of it, you have to identify it. If you do not know what mistake you've done, how can you prevent yourself from doing it again? So don't see a cross as, oh damn, don't get demotivated thinking, oh damn, I've got a cross on my sheet. Actually, it's showing you what you need to work on. This is what that cross is showing you. So then day 2 comes, and then you've got past 5, then you've done it again, another day, maybe you started slandering about someone. Then you realize, oh damn. So you identify, and as you do it more and more, and the more you do this, the more reflective you become, and the more attentive you become to using your tongue. Then you begin to think. Before that tongue comes out, you begin to think, is this right? No, I can't say this. This is slander. This is backbiting. So this is what this sheet helps you to do. So we will start this sheet today, tonight. We will start this sheet. This is the first sheet that we will start. And this is the first step to the openings, to the unveilings of the unseen, to purifying our tongue. This is the first step. This is the first sheet that's going to help us and open that gateway to seeing Rasulullah and visiting, seeing and tasting the unseen. Then once 30 days are done, then you go on to the next organ. Now we have the prayer sheet as well. So now prayer is very important. Our 5 daily prayers are very, very important. As a Muslim, it's one of our fundamentals, and we have to, without them, if we're not going to follow our 5 daily prayers, these basic daily prayers, the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then how do we expect to have an unveiling? How can we expect to see Rasulullah if we're not following what the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the basic commands, a right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has upon us to worship Him. So here are the physical disciplinary rules to protect your prayer, i.e. intentionally missing salah, that will put across, intentionally missing salah with jama'at without a valid Sharia excuse, not performing sunnati muqaddah, not performing wudu properly according to sunnah, does not know the obligatory acts of prayer. This is where your fiqh comes in. This is where your fiqh comes in. You see now how important the fiqh is. That if you don't know this fiqh, how can you do this? How can you make your prayer? And then also, it's not shown here, but there's also a spiritual level of prayer, which is more important than this. This is important, but this is spiritual. It's even more. Why? Because even if you've done all this and now you're in prayer, but your mind is at work, your mind is about a woman, your mind is about that car, your mind is about business, it's about your desires. Who are you really worshipping at that time? Are you worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time? Are you worshipping your desires at that time? So even this is more important, that how you are inside the prayer. Outside the prayer is important, but this is more, because if the actual intention is not right, if the thoughts are not right, then who are you praying? Are you worshipping Allah? In fact, you're being disobedient. In fact, you're making it worse, because now you're in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and your mind is elsewhere. Imagine you had a meeting with a very, very important person. Imagine a big maybe you're meeting, for example, the Queen or the President or the Prime Minister, and because Salah is communication, he's communicating to you, and you're like this, just looking away. Your mind is elsewhere. Your mind is wandering here. How disrespectful is that? Now imagine Prime Minister of all Prime Ministers, the one who created that, the one who runs the world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your mind is elsewhere while you're worshipping Him. How much disrespect is that? How disrespectful is that? So how you would do this prayer sheet now, I'm going to explain to you how you do the spiritual prayer. It also comes in line with so obviously the format is the same. For example, if you sort of miss one of the disciplinary rules of the physical aspect of the prayer, you'd put a cross until you get 30 days of full ticks. Once you get 30 days of ticks, then you'll go on to your next sheet or your next disciplinary. And this also works the spiritual salah. But this spiritual salah, the aspect of the spiritual salah, also intermingles with sincerity, ikhlas. So how you would do this? So number one is, so for example, what is sincerity? What is the first level of sincerity? Is in all major good deeds, e.g. 5 daily prayers and 1 zikr, one should do them for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in order to attain salvation and reward in the hereafter. One should check and refresh his and her intention in the beginning, middle and the end. Now you're putting sincerity into the salah. I was mentioning before, instead of wandering here, wandering there, Now you're going to make this intention that I'm doing it for Allah. You're putting your mind where it should be. You're connecting to that line. You're connecting to that signal. Allah is sending you at salah time. Now you're in connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now that prayer you're going to do is going to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for your own desires, not here and there. So now I want to explain to you how you'd actually do this with the prayer. How you'd practically do this with the prayer. So for example, now just say you're going to pray for salah, your Isha salah, we prayed. So before you say Allahu Akbar, you will make your intention that I'm making this prayer for the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala and attain the reward in hereafter. You don't have to say it in order to attain self, just to make it easier for yourself, to say for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the reward in hereafter. So you make that intention before your salah. Then you say Allahu Akbar. Then once you are in the salah, this is where the salah sheet will come in, is where you say now, the first level of spiritual prayer, now you say, before you start any recitation, that Allah is watching me, Allah is with me, Allah is listening to me. Then you will do thana, you'll pray your thana. So only once in each posture. So you'll make that Allah Ta'ala is watching me, Allah is with me, Allah is listening to me. You'd put this in your mind. Then you will do your thana. Then you will recite Surah Al-Fatiha, the surah. Then you will go into ruku. Then when you're doing Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, then you will rectify again. Allah is watching me, Allah is with me, Allah is listening to me. You'd put this into your mind again. And then you stand up for ruku. Then you stand up for qiyam, out of ruku, stand up from ruku. And then you'll do the same again. Allah is watching me, Allah is with me, Allah is listening to me. Then you will go into sujood. Then you'll go into prostration. Once you go into there, then you do Subhan Rabbiyal, then the same again. Allah is watching me, Allah is with me, Allah is listening to me. Then you sit in Jalsa, same thing again. Allah is watching me, Allah is with me, Allah is listening to me once. Then back into sujood, the same again. So you will do this for each posture of the salah, but you'll only do it once in each posture. So for each rak'ah, you'll only do it once. So for example, you've got the first rak'ah, in each posture you'll do it once. Then you've got the second rak'ah, in each posture you will do it once. And then you have the third rak'ah and the fourth rak'ah like this. So these now are the 5 major fundamental acts which we have mentioned. So the first one is the dhikr, which we mentioned. Then you have the muraqabah, the meditation. And then after that we have the 3 sheets, which are the sheet of sincerity, ikhlas. And then we have the tongue sheet. And then the third one is the prayer sheet. These are the 5 fundamental practices we are going to start, inshallah, today. And these 5 fundamental practices is what's going to help us and accelerate us to be able to have these unveilings and these openings. So we will be doing these day to day and give feedback to the ustads. Whichever ustads you have to give feedback, when you get the opportunity to give feedback, review it, see how your prayer is your prayer changing. You know, when you're reviewing your tongue, when you're trying to prevent yourself, see, are you stopping them sins that you were previously doing with the tongue? When you're doing your actions, when you're making these intentions, the good intention, when you're making the intention for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, see how that effect of your heart, what effect is happening in your ibadat, what effect is happening after your ibadat, you know, when you're making the intention before and after. So these 5 fundamentals is what's going to help us. Now, just before we conclude, I want to just ask to go over. So I'm going to question and ask people to go. We're going to go over the 4 preconditions again, and we're also going to go over the 5 fundamentals. So, Brother Qamar, could you mention the first 4 preconditions? The minor ones.
The first one is Aqidah.
Aqidah. Tawbah. And Brother... What have I not asked? The brother in the white jubba over here behind, brother. What's the... Yep, yourself, not behind you, yourself, mashallah. The 4 major preconditions that we went over. Do you remember? If not, yes? Yes. Yes. Can anyone remember the 4th one in particular? Enlightenment of the soul. And then finally was the 5 fundamental practices that we went over. Can someone just list them to me? Brother, could you list the 5 fundamental practices?
The tongue sheet.
Yes.
The prayer sheet.
Okay, alhamdulillah, we've managed to go over everything, and if anything which I've said wrong, then that's from myself. If anything good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakallah Ustaad Siraj, quite a lot of subject matter to cover there. And inshallah, not to panic, if any brothers have not understood anything, we will be having recap sessions, and you will also be given the opportunity to ask questions and recap individually as well. If there's anything you don't understand, there'll be people who'll be happy to sit down with you on a one-to-one basis to explain in detail, because the most important thing is we're not just sitting here to give a lecture within a certain amount of time. So okay, right, we've got 1 hour, just give it the information and make sure that we've covered that 1 hour. The most important thing is each and every single one of you understands what the message is and what it is that you've just been, what it is that you've just had delivered to you. So that is more important to us than us just ticking the boxes that this Ustad came, delivered this talk, and that Ustad came, delivered that talk. It's more individually important for yourself to understand exactly what you want to learn. So again, if you're not sure, do ask. What I'd like to do now is take a break for about 5 minutes, where you can all stretch your legs and go splash some water on your face or freshen up. And inshallah, let's get back together in 5 minutes time. Jazakallah.